Okay, picture this. You're stepping back into July 1588. You're inside Greenwich Palace. The air, it's thick, right? With all these centuries-old smells, damp straw, maybe some unwashed bodies, and probably way too much perfume trying to cover it all up.
Yeah, a real mix.
And there she is, Queen Elizabeth I, fresh off the victory against the Spanish Armada, looking absolutely magnificent on her throne, cloth of gold, pearls everywhere. Her face, this perfect mask of white, pure triumph.
A powerful image, definitely.
But then, as you get maybe a little closer, you catch something else on the air, something sharp, metallic, almost kind of putrid, maybe, cutting right through all the celebration. So today, on the deep dive, we're going behind that glorious image. We're trying to uncover the, well, frankly, shocking truth about Queen Elizabeth's personal hygiene. It really reads less like royalty and more like, I don't know, a list of medieval challenges.
Challenges is a good word for it.
And look, this isn't just about the gross-out factor, though. Fair warning, there might be moments that make you, cringe a little.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It's really about understanding the incredible toughness, the resilience it took to rule back then in a world so different from our ideas of clean.
Exactly. And to really get why England's, most famous queen lived like this, you have to understand her world. It wasn't just her choice. Bathing was actually feared. Medicine was, well, mostly guesswork.
Right.
And even the absolute top monarch lived in conditions that would horrify us today. So this deep dive, it's not just a list of unpleasant facts. It's more like a window into the survival and maybe the suffering that shaped this huge historical figure.
Okay, let's start unpacking this. The famous quarterly bath ritual. It sounds so official.
It does, doesn't it?
But she only bathed, once every 3 months? And famously said whether I need it or not, which is kind of funny, but also, wow. And the amazing thing is, that was seen as pretty advanced for the time.
It really was. Most of her subjects, they might go months, maybe even years, without a full bath.
So what was the deal? Why the fear of water?
Well, it was this deep-rooted belief, really, that water, especially hot water, opened up your pores, made you vulnerable to diseases, bad air, even, evil spirits.
Seriously? Evil spirit?
Oh, yeah. So a full bath felt like rolling out the welcome mat for sickness, which meant when Elizabeth did have her quarterly bath, it was this huge production. Servants dragging these massive copper tubs in, heating water over giant fires in the kitchens.
Major effort.
A huge effort. But here's the kicker. The water often came straight from the River Thames.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and the Thames in the 16th century. It was basically London's main sewer. Think raw sewage, animal waste, industrial runoff, just everything. Brown, thick, not exactly spa quality.
Okay.
And then there was this soap, if you can call it that. It was this rough mix of animal fat, wood ash, and lye, more likely to strip your skin off than actually clean it. So even those rare baths probably didn't do much, hygienically speaking.
Right, so you've got 90 days. 90 days between these big, fancy, but ultimately kind of useless baths. 90 days for sweat, dead skin, food smells, masking lotions, everything to just build up.
Pile up, yeah.
It's hardly surprising that courtiers apparently knew she was coming before they saw her. There's that story from 1579, isn't there? With the French ambassador?
Oh, yes, that one. He supposedly held a pomander, like a scented ball, to his nose during his audience.
To block the smell.
Pretty much. And his wife apparently fainted at a royal dinner. Officially, it was the heat, but the gossip was it was the aroma from the royal table that did her in. Really shows how even all the pomp couldn't quite hide the reality.
And while those sort of internal struggles with hygiene were bad enough, the pressure to look regal, that pushed her into some really disturbing and honestly self-destructive habits, especially with her hair and skin. But hang on, before we get to that, let's talk about her smile, or maybe the lack of one. Her teeth were apparently infamous, a subject of international gossip even.
Oh, absolutely infamous. By the time she was in her 40s, Elizabeth's teeth were reportedly almost completely black from decay.
Black, wow.
Yeah. And foreign ambassadors actually wrote about it in detail in their reports back home. It was that noticeable. The main cause, her massive sweet tooth. Sugar in the 16th century was insanely expensive, more than gold sometimes. So eating lots of it was a huge status symbol.
And she loved it.
Absolutely adored it. Her daily diet was just full of sugary things, marchpane, that's like marzipan, candied fruits, sugared flowers, little sweets called comfits, sweet wines. She'd apparently nibble on sugary stuff all day long.
So her teeth were just bathing in sugar.
Constantly. And remember, There was zero concept of modern dental hygiene. No brushing, no flossing, nothing.
Yeah.
Even rinsing with wine or rose water, which people did that probably made it worse because of the sugar content.
Oh, right.
So her teeth went from, brownish in her 30s to this deep amber color, then just black. Sometimes they'd literally crumble when she tried to eat. The pain must have been awful. She often had to stick to broths for days at a time.
And the cures back then, they weren't exactly gentle, were they?
Gentle, they were horrifying. Her advisor, Dr. John Dee, suggested things like rinsing with, well, urine.
Oh, come on.
Yep. Or mixtures of crushed pearls and wine, and even pressing a hot iron against her jaw to supposedly burn out the corruption.
Yikes. That sounds worse than the toothache.
Probably was. By her 50s, she'd lost quite a few teeth, and the ones left were really loose.
So, what did that do to her breath?
It became legendary, in a bad way. Courtiers described it as like the scent of a charnel house. There's a report from a Venetian ambassador in 1590 saying her teeth were so black and rotten he wondered how she could speak, and the smell forced him to breathe through his mouth the whole time he was talking to her.
That's incredibly vivid.
Yeah.
And disturbing.
It really paints a picture, doesn't it? Shows the real personal cost of her diet and just how limited medicine was. Even the most powerful person on Earth couldn't escape basic biology back then.
Okay, let's shift to her outward look. That famous red hair is iconic. But what was the story behind it as she got older? And how did she keep up that striking image?
Well, that Ferris red hair was mostly, shall we say, aspirational after her 30s. It was largely hidden under very elaborate wigs.
Wigs. So her hair wasn't naturally like that later on.
Not really. She experienced significant hair loss, probably due to the lead-based makeup she used constantly, and maybe some other harsh treatments she tried to use to, keep her natural hair. But the wigs brought their own set of problems.
How so?
Well, the hair for them often came from peasant women, and cleaning methods back then were basic. The wigs were essentially never washed, just brushed and maybe dusted with powder.
Never washed. Ugh.
Yeah. So they just collected sweat, oil, dust, everything. Right. And Elizabeth's scalp, which was already suffering, likely from lead poisoning, developed sores and lesions. Wearing wigs all the time meant they never really healed. It became this cycle of infection.
Good, the critters?
Oh, lice. Definitely lice. They loved that warm, damp environment under the wig. Her ladies-in-waiting apparently spent hours every day picking them out, but it was a losing battle. They always came back.
So the wig smelled too?
Oh, for sure. The mix of unwashed hair, decomposing bits of organic matter from treatments, sweat, plus perfumes trying to cover it up. It created this very unique odor that people apparently recognized as hers.
Yet she still boasted about her hair.
She did. She'd talk about her beautiful red locks, even though everyone knew it was wigs. It shows the incredible pressure she felt to maintain that perfect royal image, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And speaking of image, that signature white face, how did she get that look and what did it cost her?
That stark white complexion came from a daily application of something called Venetian ceruse, basically a paste of white lead mixed with vinegar.
Lead on her face every day.
Every single day. And yes, it was incredibly toxic. It was slowly poisoning her. They put it on with animal hairbrushes, layer after layer. It would apparently crack and flake during the day. The lead dust must have been floating in the air in her private rooms.
That sounds awful just to put on.
It was apparently torture. The mixture could burn the skin, made her eyes water. She had to sit perfectly still for maybe up to an hour while it dried, couldn't talk or drink.
And it ruined her skin underneath.
Completely.
Oh.
It created this smooth white mask, but underneath it was systematically destroying her actual skin. And because it cracked, she needed constant touch-ups throughout the day. Plus, she rarely took it all off. They'd just put new layers over the old ones.
How do they even get it off?
When they did try, the hardened ceruse often had to be literally scraped off with things like ivory combs. It would sometimes take chunks of skin with it, leaving bloody scratches. Just brutal.
And the lead poisoning. It affected more than just her skin, right?
Oh, absolutely. The systemic effects were probably huge. Things like chronic fatigue, memory loss, really severe mood swings, those famous rages, hair loss, loosening teeth, even a constant metallic taste in her mouth. All classic signs of lead poisoning.
So under the white mask.
Under the mask, her real skin was likely a mess. Sores, scars, discoloration, and her lips. Painted with cochineal crushed beetles mixed with oils. In the heat, that could go rancid, adding another lovely scent to the mix, combined with her breath.
It's almost unbelievable the lengths she went to for that image. Like you said, self-destructive.
It really was. Almost suicidal in a way for the sake of appearances.
So, okay, we've got the bathing issues, the teeth, the wigs, the makeup. What did all this mean for her clothes, those incredible gowns, and maybe even more privately, her internal health?
Uh-huh.
Let's talk about the clothing conundrum and her digestive struggles. First, the gowns, surely they were kept pristine.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But shocking as it sounds, no. Those magnificent gowns worth fortunes were almost never properly washed, never really cleaned.
Never. Why not?
Well, think about them. Finest silks, velvets, loaded with jewels, intricate gold embroidery. The harsh soaps they had back then would have destroyed them. So cleaning meant airing them out, brushing them down, and spraying them with more perfume.
So they just absorbed everything.
Like sponges. Months, maybe years of body odor, sweat, spills, bodily fluids. It all soaked into the fabric. Each gown became this sort of permanent record of her life while wearing it. And she'd often wear the same one for days, even weeks.
Wow. And the layers underneath.
The process took hours. It started with a linen shift, basically an undershirt, which itself was rarely washed, probably often yellowed and stiff. Then came a corset made of whalebone and steel that was never washed, a perfect breeding ground for bacteria.
And she liked light colors, right? White, silver.
Exactly, which showed every single mark. Plus, the sheer weight of the gowns, sometimes over 50 pounds with all the jewels sewn on, created this kind of greenhouse effect next to her body. She must have sweated profusely, and all that moisture just got trapped in the inner layers.
And her stockings and shoes.
Same story, pretty much. Silk or wool stockings, rarely washed. They'd get holes, and you'd see these yellowed, dirty toenails underneath. Her shoes, beautiful works of art on the outside, became little containers for foot odor and fungus inside. Never cleaned, never aired out properly.
Especially if she wore the same ones for days.
Precisely. It just made everything worse. The whole picture is one of, well, extreme sensory challenges for anyone who had to get close to her.
Okay, moving from the clothes to something even more personal. Her digestion. That was another area of constant trouble, wasn't it? Tied into her diet and just the stress of being queen.
Oh, definitely. Her digestive system was a frequent source of discomfort and, frankly, embarrassment. Her diet was incredibly rich. Those long, multi-course meals featured heavy roasted meats, rich sauces, tons of sugary desserts, wine, ale.
And food preservation wasn't great.
Not at all. Food was often heavily spiced, partly to mask the taste of things starting to go off. And her favorites, like fatty roast swan or venison, were really hard to digest. Add in the massive sugar intake messing up her gut balance. It was a recipe for problems.
Did her eating habits contribute?
Probably. She apparently ate quite quickly sometimes, kind of wolfing down food between official duties. That couldn't have helped. Led to indigestion, maybe even choking scares.
And the other digestive issues. Bloating, gas.
Almost constant by some accounts, both really uncomfortable and, for a queen, incredibly embarrassing. The tight corsets just made the pain worse. She apparently sometimes had to secretly loosen her corset strings during long meals, hiding it under the table.
And the gas was noticeable.
Let's just say it was reportedly legendary among her courtiers. She often had to excuse herself from public events, claiming she was unwell, when the real issue was severe digestive upset, and her medications didn't help.
Like the mercury.
Exactly. Mercury was sometimes prescribed then, possibly for suspected syphilis, but it acts as a really powerful laxative. So severe diarrhea, cramping, and many herbal remedies she took also had toxic ingredients that could cause nausea and other stomach problems. A real perfect storm.
It's becoming clear that beyond just the rotten teeth, her whole mouth was, well, a disaster zone. And trying to cover it up just backfired. This really was an oral hygiene catastrophe.
It truly was. Her mouth was just this constant breeding ground for bacteria and infection. The smells, the tastes, they must have affected everything. Her tongue, for instance, was often described as having this thick, yellowish coating. Bacteria, dead cells, food debris, never properly cleaned. It built up, causing a really foul odor and a taste she herself apparently described as being bitter as wormwood.
And her gums.
Perpetually swollen, bleeding, which was considered kind of normal for her age back then, believe it or not. But that constant low-level bleeding mixed with her saliva, creating this metallic taste she was always trying to get rid of.
Did it affect her saliva too?
Seems like it. Sometimes it was apparently excessive, thick, kind of ropey. Other times her mouth was uncomfortably dry, which would have made speaking difficult. And the sugar, always the sugar, just fed the bacteria, making everything worse, faster.
And her throat.
Likely chronically inflamed from the constant infections spreading from her mouth. Sore throats, Difficulty swallowing? It was probably a constant battle. She tried desperately to mask it all, chewing herbs like mint, but they were no match for the underlying problems.
Even the mouth rinses didn't help.
Ironically, they probably made it worse. Things like wine, vinegar, honey mixtures, they all contained sugar or acids that just fed the bacteria or eroded the enamel further. A real losing battle.
So, faced with all these smells, breath, body, wigs, her main strategy was just more perfume.
Yeah.
Which leads us to the perfume paradox. How did that strategy pan out?
Well, paradoxically, it often seemed to make the situation much worse. The perfumes were meant to cover up the natural body odors, right? But instead, they often just combined with them to create these really unique and apparently quite overwhelming new stenches.
New stenches, like what?
Her absolute favorite perfume was civet musk, which sounds exotic, but it's actually extracted from the anal glands of African civet cats.
Oh, lovely.
Right. On its own, maybe okay in tiny amounts, but layered over months of accumulated body odor. Courtiers describe the result as smelling like a rose garden built over a cesspit.
That's quite an image.
Isn't it? And applying perfume was this whole daily ritual. Took almost as long as her makeup. Servants dabbing scents on her wrists, neck, sprinkling perfumed powders into her clothes, her wigs.
But the perfumes themselves weren't stable.
Exactly. 16th century perfumes were pretty crude, made with animal products, plant extracts. They didn't have modern chemistry, so especially in the heat, they go rancid, turn sour, and those souring, rancid smells would then mix with her existing body odor, creating something truly foul.
Sweet and sour in the worst way.
Kind of. People described it as both sweet and revolting, like flowers rotting in stagnant water. Her clothes just got saturated with all these competing smells, fresh over rancid. She basically walked around in this portable cloud of scent.
That changed during the day.
Yeah, body heat would make the perfumes intensify and change. What smelled maybe acceptable in the morning could become cloying and overpowering by noon, and apparently genuinely nauseating by the evening. And the sad part is, Elizabeth herself seemed totally unaware. She'd just keep adding fresh layers, probably thinking she was fixing it, but actually making it worse.
Wow. Okay, even the parts of her body hidden from view and her most private space, her bedroom, they tell the same story, don't they? This huge gap between the royal image and the reality. Let's talk feet. And then the sleeping chamber.
Right, her feet. Probably the most neglected part of her body. Tucked away in stockings and fancy shoes, they were apparently dealing with all sorts of issues. Fungal infections, nasty ingrown toenails, things made worse by the lack of cleaning.
What did they actually look like?
Well, when the stockings came off, the skin was often described as kind of white, waterlogged looking, patches of fungus creating this sort of cheesy, rancid smell. Her toenails were apparently long, thick, yellowed, brittle. Sometimes they curled right into the skin.
And trimming them was risky.
Very. With the tools they had, attempts to trim often led to cuts, which then got infected easily. The spaces between her toes were just ideal breeding grounds for fungus. The smell was apparently very distinctive, very strong. Ladies-in-waiting described it like rotting cheese mixed with vinegar.
Goodness. And the shoes didn't help.
Not at all. Those beautiful shoes were just trapping everything. Repositories of odor and bacteria, never cleaned, never aired. And her habit of wearing the same pair for days or weeks just let it all fester.
So people could smell her feet.
Apparently. Servants claimed they could tell she was approaching just by the foot odor. And some foreign ambassadors made comments about strange smells seeming to come from the floor around the queen's throne.
Unbelievable. Okay, now into her private space, her bedroom. This became like the epicenter of all these issues.
Pretty much. A concentrated collection of all the hygiene problems. The royal bed itself, this amazing piece of craftsmanship, was also a monument to neglect. The bed linens, sheets, pillowcases, they were changed maybe once a month if she was lucky.
Once a month?
At best. So they became stiff. Stiff with accumulated sweat, bodily fluids from nighttime accidents or weeping sores, various medicinal ointments she used. The sheets were described as yellowed, stained, like maps charting her nights. Dark patches from sweat, yellowish areas maybe from bladder issues, reddish spots from sores.
And the mattress?
Stuffed with feathers and down. It just absorbed everything, moisture, odors, became this thriving ecosystem for insects and bacteria, never cleaned, certainly never replaced.
What about her nightgown?
Fine linen, lace maybe, but worn for weeks on end. It essentially became like a second skin of filth, stiff with dried bodily fluids, and the room itself, Especially in winter, windows were kept tightly shut. So all these odors, the unwashed body, the chamber pot that would be in the room, stale perfumes, medication smells, they were all trapped. The air became incredibly heavy, thick. Servants apparently often gagged or held their breath when they had to go in first thing in the morning. It's a stark, stark contrast to the Gloriana image, isn't it?
It really is. Which brings us towards the end of her life. In her final decade, these problems just intensified, didn't they? Reaching really extreme levels.
They absolutely did. Her skin, by then, was a complete patchwork of sores, scars, discoloration from the lead. Her face was pitted, scarred, constantly weeping under the makeup, which she wore thicker than ever. Her natural skin tone probably had this sickly yellow-green tinge, maybe from liver damage caused by all the toxins.
And her hair.
Complete loss by then. Her scalp was just a mess of infected sores under even heavier wigs. She was sometimes seen scratching furiously at her head in public, sometimes drawing blood.
Petite.
What few were left were so loose she could barely chew anything solid. Her diet was mostly liquids, broths. The constant mouth infections had likely spread to her throat, her sinuses, chronic inflammation making it hard to breathe, hard to speak.
And the smell.
By all accounts, it reached levels that people described as almost supernatural. The combination of everything, the unwashed skin, the open sores, the rotting mouth, the rancid perfumes, created an odor that courtiers genuinely described as the scent of death itself. Her presence could supposedly be smelled rooms away. Servants would literally try to flee if they heard she was coming down the corridor. And this terrible physical decline was tragically mirrored by her mental state. It's highly likely the chronic lead poisoning, the buildup of toxins over decades, contributed significantly.
How so?
Well, her memory problems became severe, forgetting things instantly, repeating herself constantly. Those infamous violent rages got worse, often triggered by tiny things. Her behavior grew more and more erratic. Managing the court must have been incredibly difficult. So when Elizabeth Tudor finally died, March 24th, 1603, at Richmond Palace, it wasn't just the end of her reign, it was the end of this decades-long, elaborate performance hiding the grim reality.
What happened right after she died?
The aftermath really revealed what had been hidden. Servants who prepared her body for burial found someone who looked almost nothing like the famous portraits. And the rooms where she lived, especially where she died, they apparently kept that distinctive, oppressive odor for months. Some parts of the palace were even reportedly sealed off for a while, basically abandoned, because they were considered too contaminated.
Wow. So we've really journeyed from that image of triumph at Greenwich Palace, haven't we? To the stark, unvarnished truth of a queen's private life. We've peeled back Gloriana's layers, seen the incredible contrast between that public image and the honestly almost unbearable reality of her daily existence, shaped by the world she lived in.
It's a powerful reminder, isn't it, that even these giant figures from history were intensely human, subject to the same frailties and limitations as anyone else, just on a grander stage.
It really makes you wonder.
This whole deep dive, it really poses a big question for us, doesn't it? What was the real cost? Personally, politically. The cost of denying the basic needs of the body, of living a life so utterly removed from what we think of as fundamental health and cleanliness.
You know, maybe in the end, Elizabeth Tudor's greatest enemy wasn't Philip of Spain or France or internal plots. Maybe it was just the mirror, reflecting back the terrible price of trying to be more than human, of denying those basic mortal needs. The Virgin Queen, who said she was married to England. Maybe she died wedded only to her own decay.
And the kingdom she left. Well, they quite literally had to air out the palaces and start over, hoping, perhaps, that the new king's reign would, in every sense of the word, smell a bit sweeter than the last queen's long, incredibly challenging 45 years. It just goes to show sometimes the deepest historical insights are hidden in the most unexpected and maybe even the most unpleasant details.